said this was a school of excellence, a place where intelligence was nurtured, not judged. But from the moment James stepped into room 204, he could feel it, the weight of being doubted. It wasn't in the curriculum or the dusty math textbooks. It was in the narrowed eyes of Mr. Grayson, the English teacher, who stared at James like he had wandered into the wrong classroom. James Washington was 15, a soft-spoken boy with dark skin, a sharp mind, and a love for words that danced in every corner of his being. Words weren't just tools to him, they were entire worlds. He had learned Spanish at the age of 7, thanks to a neighbor who had taken a liking to his curiosity. Then came French, Portuguese, German, Swahili, Arabic, Japanese, Russian, and Italian. 9 languages, 9 identities, 9 keys to understanding a world far bigger than the one that constantly questioned his worth. But none of that mattered to Mr. Grayson. "Sit in the back," Mr. Grayson had said the first day without even looking up. "You're late." James wasn't late. He had been standing by the door, waiting patiently for Mr. Grayson to finish writing on the board. But the label had been slapped on him anyway: late, lazy, disruptive. It didn't matter that he had straight A's in every subject, or that he had been invited to represent the school in an upcoming regional linguistics competition. To Mr. Grayson, all that seemed invisible. "Can you read the passage aloud for us, James?" Mr. Grayson said one Monday morning, gesturing toward a paragraph in To Kill a Mockingbird. James nodded and began, his voice smooth and articulate. He read with clarity, with empathy, with the kind of subtle pacing that drew the class in. Mr. Grayson interrupted halfway. "That's enough. Please work on your pronunciation." The class blinked in confusion. There had been no mispronunciation, no stutter, no mistake. James didn't argue. He never did. He just went home that night and read the entire novel again, in English, then in French, Spanish, and Italian. He scribbled down notes, cross-referenced translations, and highlighted cultural shifts in meaning. That was how he learned, by comparing, analyzing, connecting. Language, for James, was justice. If he could speak the world's languages, maybe the world would finally listen to him. At school, however, Mr. Grayson was deaf to brilliance. "You didn't turn in your essay," Mr. Grayson said the following week, holding a paper in the air. "I emailed it last night, sir," James replied, "before the deadline." Grayson clicked his tongue. "Well, I didn't see it. Turn it in again, and this time on time." James's inbox showed a red receipt from 9:02 p.m. the night before. But he knew what this was. Another quiet dismissal. The students had noticed. Some whispered about how unfair it was. Others said nothing, afraid of what standing up might mean for them. The few who talked to James knew how brilliant he was. They had seen him switch from English to German in seconds while tutoring a foreign exchange student. They had heard him casually correct a substitute teacher's Spanish. But Mr. Grayson wasn't interested in what James knew. He was interested in who James was, and who he wasn't. Then came the project. It was a group assignment. Translate a poem from a foreign language and present its deeper meaning in class. Mr. Grayson smirked when he read the list of assigned languages. "James," he said, holding up a slip of paper, "you'll be doing Mandarin." The class chuckled. Some looked sympathetic. Others were just curious to see how James would handle it. Mandarin wasn't on his list of known languages. James blinked. "Yes, sir." He spent the next 2 weeks immersed in Chinese poetry. He listened to audiobooks, studied characters, practiced tones. He didn't sleep much, but when the day of the presentation arrived, he stood in front of the class with a confidence that startled even those who admired him. He spoke the lines in Mandarin with surprising fluidity. His tones were imperfect, but his effort was unmistakable. He then translated each line, not just into English, but into context. He explained the metaphor of the moon as longing, the use of silence as language, the cultural nuances of nightfall in ancient Chinese literature. When he finished, the room was quiet. Mr. Grayson cleared his throat. "Well, that was ambitious. Let's move on." There was no applause, no recognition. But James had felt it, the shift in the room. His classmates saw him, truly saw him, for what he was. brilliant, prepared, determined. After class, Sarah, a student who had always kept to herself, approached him. "That was amazing," she whispered. "Have you really learned 9 languages?" James smiled. 10 now, I guess. "You should enter the national language competition," she said. "They have scholarships." "I already applied." But Mr. Grayson found out. When he finished, the room was quiet. Mr. Grayson cleared his throat. "Well, that was ambitious. Let's move on." There was no applause, no recognition. But James had felt it. The shift in the room. His classmates saw him, truly saw him for what he was. Brilliant, prepared, determined. After class, Sarah, a student who had always kept to herself, approached him. "That was amazing," she whispered. "Have you really learned 9 languages?" James smiled. 10 now, I guess. "You should enter the national language competition," she said. "They have scholarships." "I already applied." But Mr. Grayson found out. The next week, James's application mysteriously disappeared from the counselor's desk. A teacher had claimed it had been accidentally discarded. James knew better. He confronted Mr. Grayson after class. "Did you take my application?" James asked. Mr. Grayson didn't flinch. "I don't think someone like you is ready for that kind of spotlight." "Someone like me?" "You know what I mean. Stick to what you're good at. You're clearly passionate about words, but passion doesn't equal intellect." James felt his stomach tighten. He had heard this before, in different ways, from different mouths, but never this direct, never this cruel. He walked away, but he didn't quit. That night, James wrote an open letter. He submitted it to the school newspaper. It wasn't about Mr. Grayson directly. It was about expectations, about how students like him were often overlooked, underestimated, diminished. It was raw, honest, powerful. By morning, it had gone viral across the school. Students shared it. Teachers whispered about it. Some stood up and said they hadn't realized what was happening. Others finally saw the pattern. James had spoken truth into silence. Mr. Grayson called him into his classroom during lunch. "Bold move," he said. "It was necessary," James replied. "You've caused quite a stir. The principal wants to speak with you." James nodded. "I'm ready." As he walked toward the office, he didn't know what would happen next. Suspension? Apology? Recognition? But he did know this. He had spoken. In the language of courage, in the dialect of justice, and now the world would have to listen. James stood in the front of the class, breathing calmly as the final word of his translation echoed through the silence. For a long, drawn-out moment, no one moved. Then slowly, a few heads nodded. A clap, hesitant at first, began from the back row. Then another. Soon, the class was filled with applause. Mr. Grayson did not join them. He simply adjusted his glasses and muttered, "Let's move on." James didn't need his praise. He wasn't doing this for Grayson. Still, the coldness stung. Later that day, James walked to the principal's office. It wasn't to report Mr. Grayson. He had learned long ago that some truths didn't live in paperwork. It was to ask about a position as a peer tutor. The principal, Ms. Elliott, a stern but fair woman, was surprised by the request. "You want to tutor other students in languages?" James nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I've been helping a few already. I'd like to make it official." She leaned forward. 9 languages, I heard? 10 now. I'm working on Mandarin." Her eyebrow raised, but her voice remained neutral. "All right. I'll talk to the academic committee." The next week, James was a certified peer tutor. Students from all grades came to him for help. They weren't just asking for homework support. They were drawn to his way of explaining things. He made language feel like music, like freedom. News of his skill spread fast. One afternoon, a teacher named Ms. Rojas from the Foreign Languages Department invited James to co-host the school's cultural night. He'd be introducing speakers, translating brief interviews, and even performing a spoken word piece he had written, one that traveled through multiple languages in a single narrative thread. The entire school would be there, Mr. Grayson included. James agreed, even though the thought of performing in front of Grayson made his stomach twist. The night of the event, the auditorium glowed with soft lights and pride. Banners in dozens of languages hung from the ceiling. Students milled around in cultural attire, excited and nervous. James stood backstage, calm on the surface, thunder beneath. When he stepped up to the microphone, the crowd hushed. He began in English. "We are not bound by the tongue we were born into. We are bound by the truths we carry, in every syllable, in every silence." Then he shifted. Spanish flowed into French. French melted into Swahili. Swahili danced into Arabic. His voice rose and fell, carrying history, pain, resilience. Each language brought a new emotion, a new lens through which to see the same story, his story. The crowd was captivated. When he finished, there was a moment of stillness, as though no one wanted to break the magic. Then a thunderous applause erupted. Even some teachers rose to their feet. James looked out into the audience. His eyes found Mr. Grayson, sitting rigidly, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. Later that night, James was gathering his papers when he heard a voice behind him. "You're good," Mr. Grayson said. James turned. "Thank you." Grayson shifted uncomfortably. "You surprised me." James didn't smile. "That's not the compliment you think it is." Grayson blinked. "What do you mean?" "It means you never expected it from someone like me," James said. "That's the problem." Grayson's face flushed, but he said nothing. He walked away. James didn't chase the apology. He didn't need it. Some victories were loud, others were quiet, and still felt like thunder. The next week, something unexpected happened. Ms. Elliott called James into her office. Sitting across from her was a woman in a tailored gray suit, Dr. Camille Lorraine, a renowned linguist and representative from the State Youth Academic Council. "We've been reviewing candidates for our International Youth Linguistics panel," Dr. Lorraine said. "Your name came up from multiple teachers, students, and administrators. We were impressed." James sat still, unsure how to respond. "You'd be representing your district at our global summit in Geneva this summer," she continued. "We'll cover travel, accommodations, and you'll be part of shaping educational policies for multilingual studies." James blinked. "Me?" "Yes, you," Dr. Lorraine smiled. "Your language abilities are incredible, but more than that, it's your perspective. You don't just speak languages, you listen through them. That's rare." James looked at Ms. Elliott. She nodded, proud. "I'd be honored," he said softly. As James walked out of the office, a breeze followed him. Everything felt lighter. Not because his struggles had disappeared. They hadn't. Mr. Grayson still taught room 204. People still judged. But something had shifted. The school, slowly, began to see James not as a curiosity, but as a force. His tutoring sessions grew. He was asked to mentor freshmen. He even helped rewrite parts of the school's language curriculum to include more inclusive and non-Western sources. Students started speaking out more when they saw unfair treatment. James had become a ripple that turned into a wave. One afternoon, as James helped a new student from Brazil navigate their first day, Mr. Grayson passed by. He paused. "James." James looked up. "Good job, really." There it was. Not just an acknowledgement, but a release. James gave a small nod. "Thank you, sir." That night, James sat at his desk, surrounded by notes in Arabic, Mandarin, and Italian. He picked up his pen and began to write again. Not an assignment, not a poem. A letter. To himself. You were never invisible. You were always loud. Your silence just wasn't in their language. He smiled. In a world that had tried to mistranslate him, James had become fluent in his truth.